Yes, graduation in Zion. We got Mark Sargent. Mark, can you hear me?
I can.
All right, let me turn this music down here. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Yeah, where am I calling you from? I mean, where are you?
I am out in Boulder, Colorado.
All right. What's the weather out there right now?
It is sunny and 75, blinding because we're up so high.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for agreeing to come on the program and talk about a very controversial subject.
Oh, I'm happy to do it.
I mean, if you mention the word flat Earth to anybody, they'll think you're stupid or crazy or a combination. And
oh yeah.
So this is a delicate subject, and I've actually talked about it on this show before. So I've a little bit up to speed. But what I want to know is prove it to me. Prove that there is a flat Earth, because I'm still reading through I'm not decided. I'm still on the fence.
Sure.
Whether there is one or not. I mean,
yeah.
What do you got?
Well, you have to go back a ways, to look at the picture, because for the first 4,500 years of our history, in every culture, every subsect, every religion, every tribe of everything we know, that's what they thought. They thought that we lived on a flat or flattish circular disc that was surrounded or covered by some sort of, either solid or permeable structure that, like a canopy or a tent that held the stars and the planets. And that all changed about 500 years ago, which is relatively recent in our history, the early part of the 1500s, by a guy named Copernicus, who didn't even publish it until, after his death. And he stated that, he took a big leap, back then, and he stated that if the world, if you took the map and wrapped it around the ball and spun it at 1,000 miles an hour and then circled it around the sun at 60,000 miles an hour, then it must be a globe, and everything else in the heavens must be a globe, and that's where we went. Unfortunately, there was literally we were so far away from proving it at that point that everyone just kind of accepted it as is, And so for 20 generations, we taught everybody that it was a globe model, a heliocentric model, and that's where we went forward.
Well, no, wait a minute. Wasn't he ostracized? Didn't the church come down on him at the time?
Well, initially they did, sure, because the church, it's in all the religious texts, and you can't exactly remove that part out of there that the Earth was, especially in the Christian religion, that it was a circular structure that was covered by the firmament, which was this impermeable barrier of which it was the waters that separated the waters. It was the first chapter of Genesis. So yeah, the church, the Christian church resisted heavily in the beginning, but they realized that it may be a losing battle, and it would be easier to just kind of bend with science, maybe just this once. And so they did, and at that point everybody went forward with it, because it wasn't going to be that much of a stretch. So instead of in the Isaiah thing where he said he who sits upon the circle of the earth, now you can sort of bend that into your sermons that he who sits upon the globe of the earth. It's easy enough to do, even though you're not going to change the actual scripture. So 20 generations go by.
I'm just kind of amazed that they would change their mind so quickly. Wasn't there some money?
No.
Money
I mean,
involved,
it wasn't quickly. It took years to do, but it was, and I'm sure it was a very, very hard decision at the time to do. But you didn't want to remember, if you're religion, you don't want to have it's such a radical change that you don't want to be, and it's going to sound silly, but you don't want to be left. You want to be left behind. So if science starts picking up speed, and you're still holding on, to an enclosed system model, then you could lose followers. You could lose a fan base for all intents and purposes.
So are we talking about how long did it take to make this shift approximately? How many years?
I'd have to look it up just to be sure, but less than 100 for everybody to make the shift.
Okay.
So balloons. So the problem was, again, you couldn't prove you couldn't prove it, the sphere from an absolute point of view, because you could never get high enough to actually look at the world and see what it really looked like. I mean, you could throw out all the math you want, and you could sail a ship around the world, but it's still, if it's on an enclosed system, you might be sailing in a circle. You don't know. And the first balloons to go up high enough weren't for another 200 years, so that was like 1750, 1760. First planes weren't for 400 years. That pushes you all the way forward to 1900. But even then, you couldn't fly above the weather until after World War II, really. Until they got pressurized cabins. And then the first rockets start going up in 1957, and by the United States and Russia. And about that time, everything got real weird, because you would have thought that it's like, oh yeah, well, this is the first time we can actually go up and take a picture of the world and show people what it really looks like. But there were no pictures in 1957. As a matter of fact, you didn't see, the first picture didn't even come out till almost 1970. And at that point, NASA had only released, and you can look it up online, everyone will recognize it, still the same one used in all the textbooks, and that is, there's only one picture of the Earth that NASA has ever really put their stamp on from space. And it's amazing. And that stayed that way all the way until the year 2000, or even into the 2000s. It really wasn't until the Internet started going high speed that there was a demand for pictures of the Earth from space. And so at this point, if you Googled Earth from space, you're just going to see rows and rows and rows of composite images. And then once Google Earth got into place, then that took over from there, and for the most part, people didn't really pay attention of it. It just kind of slipped by. But that's how the whole thing started. And if you want me to go back, I can talk about.
Well, so what you're saying is that until the moon landing, shall we say? I mean, didn't they have some photos of the moon landing supposedly, if it in fact did happen, of the Earth that they sent back?
Well, that's just it. There was a noticeable absence of pictures. As a matter of fact, depending on which date stamp you look at, there were no pictures released until, again, the famous picture, and you'll know because it shows the bottom part of Africa and a heavy clouded Earth and the bottom part of Antarctica, which we'll get into in a bit. But that picture either was taken in 1969 or was taken in 1972. But if it was taken in 1972, that means they waited till the last moon mission before they actually released the picture.
Wow.
And again, you would have thought that going into all these moon missions, not only would you have all sorts of photos, especially from the moon, but you'd also have, a lot of video. And video was almost impossible to find until, the Internet came out, and then the stuff that was being released was flawed at best, because there was one notorious one where they show a 24-hour time lapse of the Earth, but the weather isn't, the clouds aren't morphing. It was almost like it was just a whole bunch of shots taken at the same time from something else, or it was simulated, but they didn't bother to work on the details and make sure the weather was morphing.
Right. So, Mark, are you saying that basically they didn't even know anything? They had a theory. Copernicus had a theory.
Yep.
They picked up on the theory, but basically they didn't know until they went into space and brought those pictures back. But there are so few pictures that, and they're faked, is what I'm hearing.
The question then becomes.
So then there's actually no proof that the Earth is round as of now.
No. Even as of right now, and I have made several videos on YouTube to point this out, and it's such a huge, monstrous secret that most people, it blew right by me, and it was right under my nose. 15 years ago, it was literally right in front of me, and I would not make the leap because again, it's the only conspiracy that we debunk to children, literally. We put a globe in the classroom, when you're in first grade, it's sitting either on the teacher's desk or in the corner of the room, and they don't even have to do anything. They just let it sit there, and you stare at it for the entire time you're in school, and by the time you get out, that's what it's like, where do you live? I live there. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows the globe is true. The problem is that when you ask people, you run into two answers. And the first answer is, because I've asked tons of people. I said, okay, how do you know you're on a globe, right? And the first answer is always the same. It's like, well, because I know.
Yeah.
I know. What are you, an idiot? Why are you talking about? You're a crazy person. I know I'm on a globe. And they say, well, how do you really know? And then the second answer is always the same. Well, there's the picture.
Yeah.
There's the picture of the Earth from space. So the question then becomes, let's say in the 1950s, they went up in a rocket high enough to actually try, either they got high enough to take a picture and they didn't like what they saw, or the rocket didn't get high enough at all. So if you found out that your world, which you've been preaching for 20 generations, wasn't a globe, was actually like a Truman show, an enclosed system where everything was managed, would you tell the population? And everything that I researched over the last 9 months led me to the conclusion that no, you wouldn't tell the population. Not if you're the standard, your garden variety government authority power.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do it.
So
you wouldn't do it.
So okay, if we're on a flat Earth,
yep,
because we haven't proved that it's round, is basically what you're saying. What does it look like? What does this thing look like? And this is there are some disputes, of course, because you don't know the exact model for sure, but from the thing that I designed, where I was trying to build it from scratch, saying, okay, let's go with the standard flat Earth model and see what I know. It is a dome-like enclosed structure, but the dome is not as high as people would think. It's not like a snow globe where you have a very, very high arcing dome, because you don't need it. If the system is at least, we'll ballpark it and say 8,000 miles wide, then the dome wouldn't necessarily have to be that high, because airplanes, commercial airliners, cap out at about 10 miles. Spy planes, give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe 20 miles. But you wouldn't have to make it much higher than, 300 or 400 miles high, tops, which is fairly shallow. So,
well,
wait a minute. So you're saying this is a dome that, like a super dome? Like, is it hard?
Yeah, like a sports stadium. Very, very similar. And I use that in a couple of my video pictures. It's like you wouldn't need to have a super high arcing thing to get the effect you wanted. And as far as the continent layout, people are it's real easy to find. You can go on Google and just type in, list of map projections. And the map that's in there that's the most curious that I found as I was making this stuff was called the azimuthal equidistant, and that's AZIMUTHAL, equidistant map. And it is the most unique map, I think, in the world right now, because not only is it the flat Earth map, which shows, a circular map looking from the North Pole down, where, if the globe was squished, where all the continents are kind of grouped towards the center, and the outer ring is really just a giant band of the South Pacific, South Atlantic, and Indian Oceans. But Antarctica is stretched all the way around the outside of it, like a giant barrier of ice, which falls into all these legends that go way, way back, that the Earth is surrounded by this giant ice wall, which turns out, in this case, is actually an ice continent. Now, while that is the flat Earth map, which people think it's crazy, it is also the azimuthal equidistant map, which is used by the USGS, the United States Geological Service, and it's also the map used by the United Nations flag. The United Nations flag is an exact replica of that map, which shows a top-down view with one notable exception on the United Nations map, and that is Antarctica is missing from the map. Which again stuns me. Instead of Antarctica, they have this giant, spiky wreath along the outside, but they don't say that that's Antarctica, nor do they say the outer ring, the outer circle is Antarctica. They just don't address it at all. And you'd think, since it's a massive continent, bigger than Australia, that it would be included in the United Nations. One world, one people, that whole thing. But it's not. It's a fascinating map. So,
what's the ice is keeping the ocean inside? Is that otherwise the ocean would...
Yeah, the old joke about the flat Earth map, because people think flat Earth, they think, oh, it's ridiculous because it's obvious. Hundreds of years ago, it was said, oh, well, it can't be flat because the oceans would fall off the edge and ships would fall off the edge, and it'd be a horrible disaster and everybody would die. But if you use the azimuthal map and go out to Antarctica is, coincidentally enough, 2 miles high. around the entire continent. It's not just like, it's not like your normal places where you have lowlands and plains and mountains. No, it is like a steep incline up 2 miles, and then it plateaus out, and then the rest of the continent is either 2 miles high or higher at that point. So yeah, not only would it keep all the water in, all the oceans in, but if you added more water, if you added another, say, I don't know, 1.5 miles, 2 miles, which would cover, at that point, almost the entire rest of the world, then you've got, there's your great flood myths right there.
I was just thinking about that. What if that barrier melted?
Yeah. Well, no, it's not. It's not all ice. The ice is only so thick. It is very, very. It is a very, very rich in resource continent. As a matter of fact, Antarctica itself is a amazing mystery that has been completely pushed into the cover so far that nobody looks at it. Going back to 1955, when Admiral Byrd, the youngest admiral in the United States Navy and the greatest living explorer, probably the greatest explorer we ever had as the United States, he kept doing expeditions down in Antarctica like he was looking for something from 1928 until 1954. And, and he spent the rest of his life there. But in 1954, after the last, the second to the last expedition, he comes back to the States, and he does this interview on CBS television. And during that interview, he's very upfront about stuff, and apparently whatever he was looking for down there, he hadn't found it, because they were just going to start making money at that point. Because on national television, people can look this up on YouTube. It's a great documentary. It only came out last year, and we were lucky to have it. He said that the whole place is basically made out of money. There's enough coal to supply the entire world, oil, minerals, uranium, and it's so vast. It's millions and millions of square miles of untouched land. There's no indigenous population, no animal life, no plant life, and all these nations were down there ready to make money. You had United States, you had Great Britain, you had Russia. Great Britain and Russia were still rebuilding after World War II. You had Australia, New Zealand, Argentina, Chile. Everybody was down there, and after that interview, again, everybody was hyping everybody up. It's like, oh yeah, everybody's going to make money. We're going to be down there for the next 100 years. And then they go down there in 1955 and 1956, and they find something. And whatever it is, and you guys can speculate all you want, whether it was aliens or Godzilla or, a giant alien base, whatever it was. But it was something so jaw-dropping, so huge, that they couldn't. Not only could they not come up with a cover story for it, but they actually they kicked everybody out. Every country that was down there, every country that I listed, they all left at the same time, and they couldn't get out. They couldn't get out of there fast enough. And while they were leaving,
I'm sorry, what year was this?
This was 1956. Was Operation Deep Freeze, and while they were leaving, Russia and America immediately started up at, this is kind of a diversion, but you'll see where I'm going with this. So in 1956, Operation Deep Freeze ends, or whenever they found it. And then in 1957, the United States and Russia became extremely interested in the sky. Extremely interested, all of a sudden. And they both started up their rocket programs very, very quickly, at a very accelerated pace. And then in 1958, right after, once they got the rockets, to a stable point, they put nukes on top of them and started firing them straight up. And they kept firing, and so the first 3 shots by America in 1958, they were firing, big nukes straight up at high altitudes, detonated them. What are they shooting at? They're still not saying. And then right after that, they formed NASA in 1958. And while they're doing that, the Russians, they're also firing nukes straight up. 1959, the NASA announces the Van Allen radiation belt, which, if for those of you who don't remember what that is supposedly a series of bands of radiation which make space travel extremely deadly. They're basically just saying, we didn't find a dome structure or anything, but we did find a radiation belt which nobody should ever go up through. 1959, the same time they announced the Van Allen radiation belt, they also decide to put the Antarctic Treaty in place, which means not only is not only is nobody allowed to do anything down in Antarctica, but it bans all countries, all corporations, basically any corporation in the world. Nobody can go into Antarctica ever. And that was, goes against everything that we're taught about, especially in America, in a capitalism based society. But it wasn't just us; it was everybody. What can scare Russia off when they need the resources? Great Britain also needed the resources. Nobody could go there. So 10 nations initially signed it, the original ones that were down there, and every country that becomes economically viable, they are also forced to sign the treaty. So as of right now, there are at least, I think there are 52 as of today, the countries that have signed the treaty. And, it's just one of the things you do. Oh, yeah, by the way, you're a tradable partner? Great, sign this treaty. You don't get to go to Antarctica, ever. So
wait, before you go on, Mark, getting back to the rockets where they strapped nukes on top of the rockets and shot them at the sky. So is this what you call atmospheric testing of atomic weapons?
That's the funny thing. We're talking about a time when nukes were very hard to come by. There were only 2 countries in the world that had them. They're horribly expensive. And the first, even if you look at the shots, and people can Google this is not secret information. You can go to Wiki and Google high altitude nuclear explosions, and you'll see the list, at least the public list. And it's like the first 2 shots were low yield, about a kiloton a pop, and then those third and fourth shots were 3.8 megatons, and those were big hits. And then after that, they lowered the yield down, but it was almost like they were probing from that point forward, and they kept probing for the next 4 years. Russia and America kept firing nukes basically as fast as they could make them. And it took a little time. You couldn't just, it wasn't an assembly line process at that point. And they kept firing.
That's so stupid, though. I mean, isn't that going to, put radiation into the atmosphere and plutonium?
From their point of view, they had questions they need answering. But yes, it wasn't smart by any stretch. At one point it's like, well, if it is the firmament, let's take the literal translation and say, let's say it's something that separates the waters from the waters. At that point, what if you punch a hole in the side of the tank and all of a sudden there's water? As a matter of fact, one of the packages, and you guys can look this up. One of the packages of nukes, the series of nukes that were shot by the United States, was called Operation Fishbowl, which is an amazingly unusual name for aerial testing of nuclear weapons.
Well, what would happen if it was the firmament? What would happen if they broke through?
Well, that's the big question. If it depends what's there. I mean, it's a knee-jerk reaction. I absolutely understand why they were trying to break through, if that was the case. But yeah, let's say you break through and it's it's a hostile. Could it be toxic on the outside? Could it be water? If it was water, well, there's your flood myth again. It was really no different for me than watching. Remember the old stories about the Southwest testing of the weapons when the thought was. Remember Oppenheimer said that if we do this test, there was a chance. Some of the formulas said we could ignite the atmosphere and just burn off the entire atmosphere, but they did it anyway.
Right.
Because who's going to yell at us? And I think that was the same thing. It's like, if we break through and there's water, and that'll be, the last decision we ever make.
So they also did underground testing, too. Is that the same reason they did underground testing? Because I always think the thing works. I mean, why keep exploding it?
Well, people don't like, confinement. And men, especially men in power, really don't like confinement. And so, it's a knee-jerk response, but I totally saw it. If you all of a sudden find out you're in, and I hate to use the word cage or jail or anything like that, but if you're in a confined system, one of the first things you're going to see is like, okay, like any species, you're going to test the boundaries. And if you can't dig underneath it, if you can't go over it, can you go through it? Because animals don't have the ability to make complex weaponry, but we did. If we only had cannons back when they found this, they would have used cannons. Absolutely. So, but they didn't do it forever. They stopped in 1962. Both Russia and America stopped at the exact same time. And some people say, well, it was a moratorium. It's like, no. They knew full well, when they were going to stop. And at that point, I think they had mapped out, everything about the structure that they could, because you can do, with lower yield weapons, you can at least kind of paint a picture. I know it's kind of a toxic way of doing it, but you can paint a picture in light of, and take measurements of what you're looking at. But that stopped in 1962, and at that point, they had already started NASA 4 years earlier. But right after they stopped those the high altitude explosions, that's when they started the moon program, and the Apollo program was born. And again, also very deliberate, because.
So what was JFK saying then when he said that, we're going to go to the moon? Did he know about this high altitude testing?
You wonder, because as far as levels of secrecy go, how much did JFK know? Presidents are only, they're not the top of the food chain by any means. So did he know? Yeah, maybe. It's hard to say, because he had that one line in that speech you mentioned where he said, we choose to go to the moon and do the other thing, which is kind of an interesting, phrase in itself. But I don't know. Did he know? Maybe. Maybe he had a plan. I mean, Lord knows the man was a rebel against the system. Maybe he had a plan that, like, hey, maybe we should tell the people about it. Maybe he thought that it could be introduced into the system, and it wouldn't be that bad. But the authority, the powers that be that were above him certainly didn't think that was the case. So in 1963, they started the Apollo program. And at that point, they created what really was the greatest con of all time, which was you have to fake everything when it comes to space, because you can't let people, if you don't want people to know, then you have to create the illusion that you're up there. And it started, with the Apollo program, getting Stanley Kubrick on board, the famous director, to research all, what can be done. And, you make the moon seem almost nonchalant. You go the first time, and it should be a big deal. And again, the Van Allen radiation belt was an Achilles heel, I think, for them, because you announced that there's this horrible, deadly layer of radiation in 1959. So you've got 10 years before you're going to do an Apollo program to figure out how you.
Sorry, Mark. Was that above the firmament or below the firmament?
Well, that's just it. I don't think ever it existed. I think the Van Allen radiation belt was the firmament. It was them basically saying, look, nobody wants to go up there. It was almost like putting, and this will kind of date me, like putting a Mr. Yuck sticker on the sky, and saying, nobody should go up there. It's super, super dangerous. So that discourages private space programs. It discourages anybody from other countries from doing things on their own, because we'll let the Americans go first.
Well,
it seems
it's funny.
Really
it's funny that you would say that, because other conspiracy theorists who think that we didn't go to the moon would say that, well, the reason we didn't go is because of the Van Allen radiation belts. They couldn't have gone because it would have melted their spacecraft or whatever, or turned them inside out.
Those astronauts. If the Van Allen, so it's a lose-lose thing for NASA. Yeah, if the belts were real, if the firmament was actually a layer of radiation, something permeable, something you could get through, then here's the problem with that, and that is, one, if you're doing the Apollo missions, and it was obvious, anyone can look this up, all the Apollo spacecraft did not have any shielding to speak of at all, because the only way to shield, radiation is with lead, and lead is very, very heavy. But they sent it anyway. They, and then they just kind of, waved people off. It's like, oh wait, what kind of shielding do they have? Whatever. So you go stick. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about this barrier. How solid is it? I mean, do we get asteroids here on Earth? Do we get meteors?
We do get asteroids here on Earth.
Meteors.
And again, if it's a permeable barrier, then you can still introduce. I do not think that asteroids at all are just random rocks from space. I think they're introduced artificially, like everything else in the system, and introduced at speed. Let atmosphere and friction do the rest. And to date, they've all blown up for the most part. Over things. We haven't had any population centers get hit by anything.
Wait a minute. Who's doing this, Mark? Do you know who's doing this?
No.
Okay.
If the builders themselves, whoever created the system, whether it's an automated process or there's people monitoring it or there's people maintaining it, they seem to be out of the picture for now. And rightly so. You wouldn't want to. It seems like the entire process. One of the big reasons of hiding everything so extremely well, like in a Truman Show scenario, is so that we act naturally. People say, well, you're creating a jail and we're in a cage and everything. It's like, no, because a jail has bars. And if it's a confined space, everything's been hidden to the point where you don't know that you're in that system. We think that, we're in a ball flying around in space. We're a tiny speck in the middle of nothing. But from a simulation standpoint, you could in something this big, it could be created. The illusion could be created very, very easily, especially in the sky.
So let's get back to the flat Earth here.
Yeah.
Is this Earth, is it rotating? Is it orbiting? Is it doing anything, or is it just sitting there? I'm going off of every text, every myth, every legend that I've read about. It is not doing anything. It is sitting fixed, absolutely. And I don't want to quote the King James Bible too much, but a lot of the texts say the same thing, and that is fixed. It is immovable. It is put there. It is not rotating at all. Is there any other proof besides these ancient texts?
If there was, I think we'd probably know it at this point. Oh, you mean as far as just people mentioning it? No. I mean, it's one of those things where everything that I looked at. Let's put it this way: I did not want it to be an enclosed system when I was looking at this. I initially had thought, like anything, because I didn't want to look at it because it was, again, it's ridiculous, it's ludicrous, it's insane. But the more I looked at it, the harder time I had creating the globe. Because if it's a globe, there should be a lot more of certain things. If it's a globe, it's easy. Even if there was a Van Allen radiation belt, for example, which is just radiation, you should be able to punch a probe through it and take pictures by now of the Earth. We have the technology now. There's certain things that are missing here. People argue all the time, about the moon missions and the Apollo stuff, and they say, oh, did it happen or did it not happen? But that's not the question they should be asking. The question they should be asking is, why would they fake it? What could you possibly gain from it, motivation-wise? And the more I looked into this, the more I saw that it wasn't that. It's not the right question or not the right statement. It's not that you want to fake the space program and fake the moon missions. You have to. You absolutely have to do it, because if you don't do it in a certain amount of time, the private sector takes over. In fact, the private sector has been kind of creeping in the last 10 years anyway with SpaceX and the guy from Virgin Airways. But if the private sector got involved, there'd be accidents because they don't know what's happening. And if there was accidents, there'd be inquiries would lead to committees, and eventually you'd have to fess up. And the goal there is to keep this going as long as possible from the authority standpoint, because they don't want to reorganize the power structure.
Right. Well, okay, if you've just joined us, we're talking to Mark Sargent, and we're talking about the flat Earth, and seems to be some pretty good evidence that perhaps we're not living on a round Earth, whether it's flat or not. I don't know. But let's take a short break, Mark, and come back on the other side. Listen to the community radio. It's Buttermilk. DJ Pockets will be back in a little bit.
Look, with DJ Pockets. You listen to me. You listen to by the mic. The DJ Pockets. A peanut that you won't soon forget.
All right, DJ Pockets, back here with an experience you won't soon forget here on your community radio station. And I've got Mark Sargent talking about the flat earth. That's right, no joke. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing great, yeah. And sort of a mind-shattering subject here that I never thought about until about a few weeks ago. I thought it was all a joke. And never looked into it, as I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this for the first time would say the same thing, and you as well. Let's talk a little bit about you. You sent me your bio, and I thought that was funny that you were you played computer games for a living until 1997.
I did. I was recruited as a ringer for a small game publisher, PC game publisher out in Colorado years ago. I had won a tournament. It was a computer pinball tournament back in the early 90s, and a lot of fun. Played with thousands of people all over the world, and won it. And part of me winning it was I got to test one of their new games, and during the testing process, the developer was out of Japan. Little Wing Pinball. They recommended that I should, maybe join up with this developer and the producer. So they brought me out to Colorado and interviewed, and then I got to go around to all the conventions, Macworld and E3 and anything else that was going on, and play games and test other people's games. But while I was at conventions, I'd play games all day.
Oh my God.
And make them look better than they were, and it was a lot of fun.
Oh my God. A dream job for some people.
Yeah.
And your motto, I have a motto on this show. My motto is an experience you won't soon forget. And your motto is hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
Yep.
And or don't regret what you've done, regret what you haven't.
Yeah. Take chances.
Take chances.
And, as long as they're positive, don't
of course
rob a bank just because you can. That sort of thing.
I've never done that before.
No.
Let's try that. Well, thanks again for being on the program and talking about this, really interesting subject and mind-blowing.
Yeah. The enclosed system or enclosed world. I try to avoid the flat Earth stigma because, like the globe model, flat Earth kind of goes hand in hand with it, and that because politicians will use it, especially Obama recently, where he's got that wonderful little line from last year's speech where he said, we're willing to work with anybody. He lists off all these groups, and then 30 seconds later he says, we don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society. It's like, oh man, that doesn't help me at all.
Well, they're very busy.
Yeah. Well, they are as of late. Again, a year ago, we wouldn't have been talking about this, and then for whatever reason, in 2015, it has really taken off. There's way more traction than I would have ever thought.
How do you suppose? Because of my show?
I think so. I think you're one of the reasons it's trending as we speak.
Oh, God, I'm trending. Oh, no.
Don't do that.
No, I mean, seriously, why is this now on people's radar? That's interesting in itself.
I don't know. I looked into it, last year for a good 9 months, and then sat on it for a while, and then earlier this year, just about the first part of last month, second week of February, I woke up in the middle of the night, and it was like I had I had the structure in my head. And I don't mean just the enclosed structure. I mean I had the narrative in my head. I had watched all the flat earth stuff that was done by everybody. I looked at compilations and everything it was doing, and I was going, you know what? I think I could put out something that is clear, that is very easy to digest and that people can understand, because a lot of it sounded kind of staticky.
Yeah.
Not condemning any of the guys that did stuff out there. There was some good stuff, but I was looking for total clarity, which is why I went with a simple narrative and a slideshow. And I never would have thought, honestly, and I put it out there. I just did the first two. I did the introduction and the Flat Earth Clue 1. And for those that are listening, all you have to do is Google. You don't even have to go to YouTube now. Just Google Flat Earth Clues, and the whole screen will explode. And after that, it just came to me every day. I knew the narrative. To the point where I had finished the intro and the first 7 in 8 days.
Right.
And got them up there, and then slowed down a little bit for the last ones. Tried to take a breath and step back and see what I was doing, but after they started coming out, a lot of people started putting out new stuff, and every day now, people are putting out new things, and they're digging into it more and more, and it has evolved from what was considered literally the laughing stock of the conspiracy world to now a very approachable subject, which I think is fantastic.
Let's back up a little bit, though, Mark, and talk about how you went from a job testing out video games to this line of work and sort of looking into the mysteries of civilization, as you say in your bio there.
I had always wanted to. I was a conspiracy guy. By the time I was in my mid-20s, I dug into quite a few. If you spend enough time on the internet, it's going to be put in front of you. No question. The internet is a great place for a conspiracy world. But what I was doing was I was also teaching people proprietary software. So I was doing a lot of software training, a lot of structured training, which kind of dovetails into this. And I did that for years. I did time and attendance software for 9 years, and then did some data mining and internet research for another 3 years after that. And it all kind of, I spent a lot of time online looking at a lot of stuff. And went through the general garden variety, conspiracies we won't get into here. Everybody knows what they are. And this one, came across my desk every once in a while, like every other year. And I really didn't give it much credit, like anybody. I would either laugh at it or just roll my eyes and go, next, and do the other, go back to this and that. And then for some reason, I got to the end of, I got through all the other conspiracy stuff, and I'm, just waiting. It was really like literally like the last book sitting on the shelf, and you're thinking, I'm not going to enjoy this at all. So, but I might as well just do it. This way I can say I did it. Maybe it was because I was, I'd gotten a little older. So I looked in it, and then I started kicking myself, because the more I looked in it, the more I realized this was something I probably should have looked at a long time ago. And and again, the more I looked at it, the bigger it got, and the deeper it got, and the more loose ends and the threads that I kept tugging on, and more stuff kept coming, to the point where for me it became the final conspiracy, the last conspiracy. It puts all the others to shame in scope and size. You can say what you want about, not knocking the other conspiracies.
Yeah.
There's some good conspiracies out there, right?
Oh yeah, there's the good ones. Yeah,
some epic ones, but this thing's got teeth. It's got a lot to it, and
it condemns modern science really as well. I mean, you're talking about Copernicus, you're talking about Galileo, you're talking about Isaac Newton, you're talking about Kepler, Einstein. These are heroes.
There's motives here of protecting the status quo that, and there's some really big decisions that have to be made. And honestly, if you're a science organization, and let's put it this way, if a science organization finds the firmament first, are they going to tell religion that there's a firmament? No, they are not, because you might as well just hand your enemy a big bat, and they're going to start clubbing you with it, because you've been yelling at them for years about this and saying, religion's horrible, religion's backwards. But what they forget about religion is is that religion has kept this thing in their back pocket for a long, long time. It has always been there. They have not forgotten about it, but they've just kind of, they put it on the back burner, and they think they're never going to get a chance to bring it out again.
I think what science has done, or the modern mainstream, has given religion a bad name, basically, and so they throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak.
Yeah.
And we're not just talking about the Christian church. We're talking about all the organized religions have a flat Earth conception of the world.
Yeah, and all religions, to your point, all religions also are looking and have been looking. The big five: Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity. The big five have all been looking for some sort of religious artifact, a magical artifact, for all these centuries, and they haven't found it. Well, imagine if one existed, if there was a barrier or a wall, something they could walk up to and touch. You're basically giving all the world's religions what they've always wanted, all at the same time. And from a government authority, from a government royalty / very rich and elite point of view, from a science standpoint, that has got to be one of the scariest thoughts. That's a thought that'll keep you up at night.
Right.
And so, if you find it, which, they would be the ones to find it, because you don't see your, church groups going out and doing explorations on the ice. It's like, all right, do we tell them? No, they're not going to tell them.
Right.
In fact, they're not going to tell anybody. They're going to hide it for as long as they can. And in everything that I've seen, this is not something that's been hidden unnaturally for a long time. It's really only been hidden for 60 years. Give or take, and that's not a lot of time in the grand scheme of things, because I think the power elite, the authority, for hundreds and hundreds of years, I have no doubt that they had ancient maps and drawings of what the world looked like. But if you didn't have the technology to actually explore it yourself, then it becomes myth like anything else.
Yeah, like today's people, well, how could you verify that the Earth is round? You don't have a spaceship. You don't have a plane. Most people don't have a plane. Most people don't have the means of even checking it out.
Yeah, that's and that technology. By now you would have thought, all the movies from years ago, we should have flying cars by now, right?
Right.
No one's getting flying cars, and it's for this reason.
Well, aren't we supposed to be living on the moon too?
Oh yeah, How many ways can we do this before people finally realize what's going on? Yeah. Why are there no moon bases? Why has nobody been back to the moon since 1972? The technology's there, and the reason is because you can't get there. And if you try to fake it, you're going to get caught. The moon missions at this point are so they're becoming more and more cartoonish with every year, because the internet's just picking it apart.
Right. Well,
they find new stuff literally every year. Because if you have thousands and thousands of people, looking at pictures in high definition, and zooming in on everything every day, they're going to find the flaws, like in any movie.
Well, you talked before about how few pictures there are. What about satellites? I mean, aren't satellites taking pictures of the Earth?
Well, at that point, you got to question the whole thing. Okay, let's do that in layers. If there are, why wouldn't satellites be taking pictures of the Earth? Yeah, there's like Google Earth, there's like a real-time satellite tracker that's supposedly tracking 20,000 satellites or 30,000 moving objects up in space, many of them with cameras. There should be unlimited amounts of pictures from space. It should be its own category, genuine pictures from space. And
so what are they tracking?
Oh, that's just it. The question is, at that point, if the Apollo missions were a sham, and again, it's one of the three rules that I put into this model. It's like, look, if it's an enclosed system, there's three things that cannot happen. One is the space program, and every aspect of the space program has to be faked from day one, which means above commercial airplanes, you have spy planes. But above that, you can't confirm anything. And I dare anybody to find, actual pictures. Everybody should have, every corporation that has a satellite up there should have an actual picture of their satellite up there. It's a matter of pride, and they don't. or I'll take one even further. This is the one I usually throw at people, and that is, you want to have fun, go to YouTube and type in, International Space Station, hoax, or International Space Station permed hair, where, you're seeing what is supposedly astronauts flying around moving around inside the International Space Station, and you're going to find a lot of weird and inconsistent things. And it doesn't make any sense. So my question is, okay, if you're faking people that, if there's supposed to be people in the International Space Station and they're not up there, then how can you trust any satellites at all? Are they compensating with towers? Are they compensating with fiber optics? Is every aspect of the space program, because remember, as space programs improve and spread out like a spider web, you can't just stop at a certain point. You have to let people keep doing it. You can't just, shut them down and say, no, you can't send a satellite up. You have to let them set a satellite up. Now, what happens to that satellite when it gets up there? That's up to you, because NASA controls the skies completely from end to end of this thing. But at this point, I am literally suspect of anything that goes up in a rocket. Anything. Yeah.
Anything.
Anything that goes up in a rocket, and while look at the YouTube videos and watch how every rocket that goes up rolls over and goes in this weird arc. None of the rockets go straight up or even close. They roll over to less than a 45-degree angle and start and say, oh, we're going with the curvature of the Earth and we're going to get escape velocity at some point. At that point it's like, really? Because I think you'd want to have a steeper angle than that, but. That's just me.
Right. Well, on my other show, when I talked about the Flat Earth, I had Eric Dubé on.
Oh, I didn't know you had Eric on.
I had him on. It was very interesting, and that was my first taste of the Flat Earth. And he wrote a book called The Flat Earth Conspiracy, which I urge everybody to check out. I'm currently reading it right now. It's very dense, and my dumbed-down education hasn't given me enough syllables or comprehension, but I'm slowly wrapping my brain around it. Have you read that?
I have read parts of it, and actually I feel bad because Eric and I know that there's a little bit of a rift out there, and I am trying to patch it up. He and I see eye to eye on a number of things when it comes, because he considers himself a flat Earth purist, which is totally cool. I'm totally with that. As long as it's anti-globe, I'm totally with him, and I like his work. He was out there before I was doing stuff, and I have literally nothing bad to say about his stuff. We do disagree on a few things. Is the moon two-dimensional versus three-dimensional? Issues about the stars and the planets and things like that. But everything I'm sorry,
I just want to interrupt because he says that there's no way that they can even set foot on the moon. Like the moon is translucent. Like you can see through the moon at different phases of the moon. And I don't really follow this myself, but you can see other stars.
Now, and again, I totally respect that theory, and his point is, and I agree on this point with him, is that nobody can land on the moon because there's nothing to land on. From his point of view, literally, there's nothing to land on. Not only that, but there's nothing physical about the moon. For me, I consider the moon to be some sort of three-dimensional object that's being projected on. And, if you want to look at stuff, and I know it's going to bug Eric for me to say this, but I got to mention it because it's really, really good moon footage. And that is, look at Crow 777 on YouTube, his high-definition video that he's been taking of the moon. It is really, really interesting stuff. It seems to show some flaws in the projection system. Now, whether that projection system is three-dimensional or two-dimensional, that is just, splitting hairs between Eric and me. Regardless, you're absolutely right. You can't. There is no moon to land on. If anything, and the only difference, in my opinion, is that you might be able to hit it with a rocket, but you're not going to be able to land anybody on it.
He also says that the planets aren't planets at all; they're stars, and that they're not solid or gaseous or anything either. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Well, I go even one step further. I also believe, yes, that the planets are definitely not there, and they very well could be. I mean, for me, it's really more of an image system, where the stars are projected like the myths and the legends that go back thousands of years. It's just a giant, beautiful canopy that is also the most elaborate clock system ever built. Because the astrology program is based off of the movements of the stars. And when people say, are you trying to kill astrology? I say, absolutely not. I'm not trying to kill it. If you want to have an entire predictive system based off of the movements of the stars in the sky, I'm just bringing the stars a whole lot closer. They're not light years away from me. They're way, way closer. And it makes it much more intimate. So, I try to give it a positive spin and say, look, they're your stars. You're not alone in the universe. They're your stars. It's your moon and your sun, literally. They're not anybody else's.
It's an interesting perspective. Because, they also talk about, he and other flat earthers talk about, flat earthers, it sounds so bizarre. Anyway, talk about the moon and the sun being of the same size, and the sun, this episode of this show was mind-blowing for me. He was saying that the sun and the moon are the same size, and that the sun is only, and I wasn't clear on this number, 3,000, 4,000 miles away.
It's very, very possible. Absolutely possible. The sun definitely, if you read your astronomy books, the sun is 92 million miles away. I can assure you it is not. It is way, way closer.
Well, he says this isn't just speculation. If you take a sextant, a nautical measuring instrument, that's all I know, really, and you can prove that it's only, that it's 32 miles wide and as big as the moon, and that it's only 3,000 to 4,000 miles from the Earth.
Yeah.
Have you looked into that stuff?
I have, and also again very possible for me. Again from a game design standpoint and a model standpoint, I would put it in a little closer than that. If the moon and the sun, if he wants to say, and the other flat earthers want to say it's 3,000 miles away, great, fine. One of these days we'll prove it.
Yeah.
But but I think we're both on the same page, and that is, the difference between, say, 300 miles and 3,000 miles is really not that much in the grand scheme of things. If it's outside of whatever barrier, whatever the shield is that's covering this place, then also great. I would think it would be, for me, it'd be more efficient if it was inside, because then you could do a little bit more with the heat. You wouldn't have to worry about any thermal penetration, if it was on the outside, if the outside barrier was going to stop any of the rays from coming through. But again, that's splitting hairs in the grand scheme of things. But the moon and the sun definitely way, way closer, or way larger in the sky, depending on what syntax you want to use. And part of the because they're larger in the sky, they're more important as far as they're more relevant in the system. But the sun appears to be a giant projection system, really no different. And I know religious people are going to say, well, you're downplaying it when you say it, it's like a light bulb. It's like, well, no, because if God did make the sun, he didn't say how far away it was or how big it was. He just said that he made it. Let there be light. He didn't say it was a 92 million miles away light. He said there'll be light.
Aren't we right? Aren't we all a projection though? When you break down matter, aren't we all atoms and energy and?
Well, yeah, and I didn't want to, when I did the vids, I didn't want to go into, because it's too easy and it's been done before. Are we living in a matrix? Are we living in the 13th floor? Or if you go back to the German version of that. World on a String in 1973, a German movie. Yes, it's absolutely correct. It very well could be that. And actually, one of the reasons I like the Matrix model, even though that's not what I'm talking about in the vids, is that in a game simulation, gravity is whatever you make it. Gravity literally is a dial from 1 to 100. And you can do anything you want with gravity in a simulated system. But when you try to extrapolate it to a reality, to where we are, it's tougher to explain to people. When people say, well, what's gravity? And it's like, well, even on a globe, gravity is confusing.
Yeah.
In an enclosed system, gravity is still confusing, but, and Eric and I, again, differ on this, where Eric
I was going to bring that up.
He'll say it's a velocity-based thing, which is fine. That's the natural reaction. When you punch, when you step on the gas pedal in a car, it throws you back into the seat. Hey, there's your G-force, there's gravity. But for me, if it's an enclosed system, I would go a little bit more efficient route and say that it was mechanical, using some form of molecular magnetism. And then, at that point, you can do a lot more interesting things with gravity. But again, I'm not shutting down his thing, because neither of us, can, we're not going to know until we know.
Yeah.
But that's just how I would build it.
Right. And, I hope sincerely for this idea that people come together and stop bickering. It seems like that happens a lot in this sort of 9/11 truth or conspiracy
again,
movement.
Yeah,
that
and
you
I'm
have,
not going to.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
That you have somebody will come out. They'll be on the same basic idea of what happened, and then they'll split hairs about how it happened, and then to the point where the person who's splitting the most hairs, shall we say, will say, well, that person doesn't want you to see, this far. They just want you to see this far. Like, how far does the conspiracy go, right? Well, it goes further. You don't want to take it there because you're working for the system.
Exactly. And again, I am not going to fight anybody. I am not going to say anything bad about anybody. It's like, look, the message needs to get out regardless of the details. And it kind of reminds me of, and it's a great analogy, if you remember Monty Python's Life of Brian, where there's a part in the end of Life of Brian where Brian loses his shoe and runs off, and the people behind him, pick up the shoe, and they all have different interpretations of what the drop shoe means. And one guy says, we also need to take off one shoe, and to represent, and the other guy says, no, we need to collect shoes, and it goes on from there, and it's a great little take on how things get split like that, when in reality it had nothing to do with that. In this case, the message is still the same, and which is, look, it's the globe needs to be squashed at this point, because everything that I have seen and everything that other people have seen, it's all leading to the same thing, and that is something is being hidden on a level that is so huge that it's literally tough to get your head around, because it's multifaceted, and it seems to cover all civilizations, all countries. And it seems to be beyond money on top of that, which is really unusual, because most of your conspiracies are based around money and power. And this goes beyond that.
It seems so spiritual, too, in the sense where if you knew that there was a barrier up there, then you could say, well, who put that barrier there?
Yeah, and
who,
I know
who did that?
Yeah, and I know you didn't watch number 11, but 11, I go into it, I call it Souls in the System. And what I talked about was that it is in fact, I even made a call out to the authority, and I said, look, this is one of those things that we should know, because it could actually make the world better. Meaning, if it's one thing, and I started, the down the path of, why wouldn't the astronauts, I kind of blended people in. I said, why didn't the astronauts from the Apollo missions swear on the Bible that they went to the moon? And the reason was because if there was a creator, if you actually had proof of a creator, be it a wall or a barrier or something physical that you obviously had, had the handprint of God on it, wouldn't you live your life a little better? Would you lie? While looking at the sky, would you murder anybody? Would you steal? Would you extort? There's so many things that, hate crimes would go away overnight. War would stop instantly if this was made, global. Sorry, I shouldn't use the word globe. If it was made worldwide,
right?
And it would be a better world, because people would immediately become accountable for the first time for their actions.
Yeah. Well,
it's in fact, I'm sorry. It's the old Santa Claus argument for those who still haven't gotten it yet, and that is the naughty and nice list doesn't mean anything until you see Santa Claus sitting in your living room eating cookies. And then it does. And that point, you have to take it way, way more seriously. And I don't think it's oppressive at all. Yeah, I'll throw one more out, and I hate to interrupt you, but I'll use the stoplight reference. And that is, everybody's run through a stoplight at one point in their life. Everybody's done it. But you put a red light camera on that intersection, and it goes yellow, and you don't go through it. Why? And the answer is, well, because I'll get caught. And so then I come back, it's like, why were you thinking about doing it in the first place then? It's people, it's a look over your shoulder type of thing. It's like, look, there's somebody looking after you, and they don't want you to make terrible decisions.
Mm. Well, this has been very amazing. Thanks a lot, Mark. Let's take a short break, and we can wrap this up. We can firm up some websites. You have any websites you've got out there?
I don't. I'm not selling anything except the truth.
All right. We'll be back.
But I'll throw some stuff at you.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Okay.
All right, we're back here. It's Buttermilk, DJ Pockets, another experience you won't soon forget. And I'm with Mark Sargent from Boulder, Colorado. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well.
Enjoying yourself so far?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
So you say you're not selling anything, but you are selling the truth as you see it.
I am not selling anything. I'd like to go on record to say
that's important, you know.
People have offered money. People asking if I'm selling T-shirts. I do not have any FundMe pages, no donation pages. I have a web page literally that is just a disaster preparation page, which is urbansurvivalusa.com, which is really just a little blog saying, hey, by the way, if there was a long-term power outage, these are the things you might want to think about. Which I wrote years ago, but it's still out there. I still pay the dues every month. And I don't even monetize my YouTube stuff, and I did that deliberately to so that people didn't think there were any ulterior motives. To the point where, at the end of every video, there's literally I've only got one email address. I have I have a phone number. It's my landline. So if people are thinking of trying to text me, don't, because nothing happens if you're on a landline and you get a text. And then by video 10, I put my home address, so people can Google Map that and see actually where I live. Feel free to stop by if you're in Boulder, Colorado. In case you're worried that I work in an NSA office somewhere.
Well, you're in your parents' basement, right?
There you go. Yeah.
With your tinfoil hat.
And those are not as easy or comfortable to make as or to wear as you might think.
Right.
They're not very good at all. But it's been In fact, I'm not on any social media. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter.
What?
I've got I'm on Comcast email, but for YouTube, I've been on there for a while, and because that's the new television for everybody. But when I tell people to look it up, because I didn't even trademark Flat Earth Clues, because one, I didn't think it was ever going to get this sort of traction. But yeah, when you Google Flat Earth Clues, you can't miss me. I show up all over the place, which is fantastic. But I think at the end of video 10, I said, if you want to send me anything, send me cookies, because I love homemade cookies. Although store-bought cookies are fine too. Because when I'm working on this stuff, I get kind of snacky. But that's really about it. I wish there was more I could give you, but no, I don't have a book. People have asked me if I was going to write a book yet. It's like, look, I'm only 7 weeks into this, so people. I'm not even in the T-shirt phase. I don't even know if I'd have to come up with some slogans for a T-shirt if I was going to do it.
Right.
But yeah, it's been super fun, and everybody's been really, really positive. Nobody, no debunkers have come calling. No hate mail, really. I mean, not really. And nobody's called me up in the middle of the night to leave nasty messages, which is fantastic. And again, it's been. Let's put it this way: for such a topic that should get you laughed out of the room. It has been amazingly positive, but then I get people that'll write back, oh yeah, by the way, I told my family, and they looked at me like I had a bug on my face. And it's like, well, yeah, for those of you out there, don't walk up to your family and just say the words flat earth. It never goes well. Just do what I did in the narrative. Just ask the questions. Yeah. There's something big out there, something really, really interesting.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of those videos, and at first, I was very skeptical and unconvinced, and about with the videos. But the more you look at it and the more you absorb, you're more like, well, I'm not sure about the flat Earth, but I'm not sure about the globe Earth anymore.
Yeah, and what, to your point, it's not. Look, I don't know the exact shape of this is. I'm trying to come up with a computer model for it, which could be while it's gaining traction, because I think everybody's got their own version of it. But what is happening is people are kind of losing. The globe is starting to sort of like, fade away a bit, and it's being replaced with something else. And everybody's got their own version of it, in their head. And so, even if I came up with a model, I don't think I could do it justice, because everybody's got their own take. But I am hoping, that, which is why I put out number 11. It's like, look, if the authority wants to come out and reveal this, it is such a big, and you can only say this about this conspiracy, it's such a big thing that I don't think they'd be lynched. I don't think people would necessarily riot in the streets and burn things down because it's so big. People would pretty much just stare up at the sky for the first hour and wonder where they were, and then, reevaluate their lives. And as far as crucifying the people that have hidden it for so long, yeah, of course there'd be inquiries. There'd be some hurt feelings, no question. But would people do jail time? I don't know. I don't think so. So, that's, and how many conspiracies can you say that about? Everything else, people, there'd be, acts of treason and, massive, hearings in Guantanamo and the whole 9 yards.
So, is that the next thing you're going to do is make a computer model, or what else are you doing about this?
Well, the next one I'm going to do, if and I don't want to release it until it's right. I mean, with people, I really haven't talked about this much, but the first 11 that I did, it was one of those things where I had to feel it. It was it was one of those gut feelings where I'm looking at it, I'm going through the narrative, as I'm watching it, I'm going, yeah, this is exactly what I'm going to do. Number 12, which I'm working on right now, which is called Real Eyes, Real and then EYES, goes into the illusion aspect of, because people will say, well, why can't my family or why can't my friends see what I'm seeing? And I say because they're trying to believe with their own eyes, and they don't understand that we as a species can be fooled. At a genetic level, we seem to be very prone to illusion. From simulations and studies that have been done, we're very susceptible to that, which is why, maybe why magic tricks work so well on us. And so that's what number 12 is about. And it's already, the narrative is already done, the slides are done. I was even putting some video clips in that, but I don't want to finish it yet, because as soon as I finish it, I want to release it, and I don't want to put it out until I absolutely have the feeling in my head that it's the right time. So, but I'm going to. I have no doubt that it's going to come out.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much, Mark, for coming on and talking about this very interesting, fascinating subject that changes everything.
Yeah.
And we've kind of touched on that. How this is just puts everything out of kilter as to what you thought it was, and it makes you question everything else as well. And that's kind of what I do on my show here. Is I question things and really take hard looks at things that you thought were a certain way, but it turns out that that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, well, stay on the line and we'll just chat for a minute.
Okay.
All right.
just be your destiny. I'm talking to you. I might just rise above the odds to gain my victory. Do right, do right, do right, do right. The world is a cycle. Going round and round, round and round. Everything I have has to come out in a circle. Going round and round, round and round. The world is a cycle. Going round and round, round and round. Everything I have has to come out in a circle. Going round and round, round and round, round and round. Earth I come, earth I come, earth I forward. As it was in this Irish and so shall it be in this Iowa. Jah is the key, still him as the master. Hey. Whatever you does, that's how you shall prosper. Do good, do good, do good, do good. In everything you do, remember to pray. You find your day, chase the devil away. In everything you do, remember to pray. A little prayer a day, chase the devil away. In everything you do, remember to pray. A prayer a day, chase the devil away. In everything you do, remember to pray. A little prayer a day, chase the devil. So if I see you stumble, I'll catch before you fall. I'm talking to you. You say the world is round and it's spinning like a ball. I'm talking to you. Who have eyes to see, let them see. Well, jump off my head, jump my shoulder. Spitting out the sky, that go falling on your eyes, because the world is a cycle. Going round and round, round and round. Everything around has to come out in a circle. Going round and round, round and round, round. The world is a cycle. Going round and round, round and round. Everything around has to come out in a circle. Going round and round, round and round, round. The world is a cycle. Going round and round, round and round. Everything around has to come out in a circle. Going round and round, round and round, round. The world is a cycle. Going round and round, round and round. And everything around has to come out in a circle. Going round and round, round and round, round and round. Who have eyes to see, let them see. Round and round. Well, jump off my head, jump my shoulder. Going round and round, round and round. Think about the youth, think about their
Every
future.
Tuesday from 6
Round and round. But then them can't stop the youth, some get wiser. Going round and round, round and round. Spitting out the sky, that go falling on your eyes,
Here I come again, Jaja. Before your presence we singing. Yeah. Lord, watch over our shoulders tonight and help us live our words tomorrow. Let's not forget where we're from, Father, show us the way to go. You said I must love and feed my enemies, and I'm gonna do it. You said I shouldn't hate or grudge, and I won't, not even for a minute. Let only truth come from my lips. Bless our souls, cause without you we can't make it. Lord, watch over our shoulders tonight and help us live our words tomorrow. Let's not forget where we're from, Father, show us the way to go. You're the wind beneath my wings, see me through all little things. You lifted me when I was down, now you have me standing on higher ground. Lord, watch over our shoulders tonight and help us live our words tomorrow. Let's not forget where we're from, Father, show us the way to go. How excellent is thy name, deliver us from sin and shame. Out of the mount of babe and suckling, you have ordained strength. Oh, Jah, I'm depending on you. Oh, no other help I know. Oh, Jah, I'm depending on you. Oh, no other help I know. You're the only way. Got me deeply deep. With you I wanna stay. Please don't go away, Lord. Lord, watch over our shoulders tonight and help us live our words tomorrow. Let's not forget where we're from, Father, show us the way to go. You said I must love and feed my enemies, show us the way to go. Oh, Jah, I'm depending on you. Oh, no other help I know. Oh, Jah, I'm depending on you. No other help I know. Watch over our shoulders, help us live our words. Ooh, alright. Lord, watch over our shoulders tonight and help us live our words tomorrow. Let's not forget where we're from, for the show us the
Come
way
dance
to
with the
go.
night, know your mind. To the show, let it go to raise the eyes up to the skies. To swing a girl to make a world. The original resistance in dub. Original man called Johnny Osborne alongside a man called Lone Ranger. Selector.
Yes, Daddy Ranger.
Boomshot.
You don't know. I couldn't say it better.
Tell about it.
Our resistance in dub.
Right.
Nice up in the club, Mr. Osborne says so.
Murder style.
Line up, you line up. Come in at the dance, it is a roadblock. Resistance to that. You line up, you line up. Come in at the dance, it is a roadblock.
Slow down,
Resistance to
down,
that. This sound, we no beg no friend. Dabba we no borrow the plate, we no lend. Resistance, they no beg no friend. Dabba we no borrow the plate, we no lend. From the east to the west, resistance are the best. From the north to the south, resistance are the man. From the east to the west, resistance are the best. From the north to the south, resistance not them out. So line up, you line up. Come in at the dance, it is a roadblock. Resistance to that. You line up, you line up. Come in at the dance, it is a roadblock. Resistance to that. Over the wall and in the dance hall, it is a roadblock. Resistance to that, it is a roadblock. Resistance to that, it is a roadblock. And Daddy Ranger said that.
Come when you come and this and that, some man you don't make one. Come and this and that, and then you buy your own the bar, and then you love up the new.
DJ Pockets with Buttermilk, another experience you won't soon forget. I want to thank Mark Sargent for coming on, talking about the flat earth. That's right. It's not a joke. And thanks for listening. Community Radio. It's Buttermilk, an experience you won't soon forget. I'll be back next week with something else that you might not soon forget.